This is the talk show that takes a no-holds-barred approach to politics, where truth and integrity are the standard and the Constitution honored. From Renaissance Studios, this is Champion News Talk Radio.
Good morning and welcome to a very special edition of Champion News Talk Radio. We are brought to you by championnews.net, and we are your choice for the conservative voice. This is Carol Parisi. Today our founder and myself, our founder Jack Roser and myself, have a very special guest with us, Ms. Jan Morgan.
Hi, Carol.
And good morning, Jan.
Good morning to you.
Good morning, Jack. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine, but we should all get acquainted with Jan. Talking to you before the program started, you're certainly been very busy and really a great salesman for the importance of the Second Amendment.
The Second Amendment, because it protects all the rest of our liberties, so yes.
Well, all of you who are listening by radio really should go on our YouTube site, because not only is Jan conservative, Jan, you are a very beautiful woman.
Oh, thank you. You're being sweet.
I'm being truthful now.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I hadn't noticed.
You should see me when I wake up in the morning. Makeup's a wonderful thing, really.
Thank God for makeup.
Yes,
It's one of my best
I do
friends.
every day.
Now, Jan, before the show we were talking how you got actually involved with the Second Amendment. I'm sure our listeners would love to hear some of that.
Okay.
And some of what you do, you have a media company. You are quite a superwoman, so...
No, I'm not. I'm not doing a good job of balancing it all, actually, if the truth were known. But I'm trying. I've got a lot of irons in the fire. I was, for 23 years, an investigative journalist. I worked in mainstream media. I worked for ABC, NBC, CBS. I was a television anchor, an investigative journalist, and really got tired of the liberal bias in the media. You know, as a journalist, there wasn't a Fox News way back in the dark ages when I was in TV news. So there weren't that many outlets for truth-based, fact-based, unbiased journalism that you put the facts out there for the American people and let them decipher it and determine how they want to feel about it. Now you've got biased in every one of the major networks, biased delivery of the news, their choices for what they determine is going to be newsworthy for that day. There's bias in that. There are things that are not covered intentionally that the American people are not being told about. So I got out of media so that I could tell the truth. And I have my own media company. It's called janmorganmedia.com. Interesting how that started. Jack and I were discussing earlier that he's not even on Facebook. And Facebook is how I ended up with my own media company, because I was on Facebook posting daily my political views.
Now, Champion News is on Facebook.
Let me poke in here.
Okay.
I'm an old goat, and I'm 89 years old. And I went through the first round of the communist conspiracy way back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. Went through all of that when Russia pretty much subverted about 3/4 of the world when China went under, and so much of Africa and South America and Eastern Europe and India part way.
During your time is when the American people, the big phrase that was scary was, the Russians are coming, the Russians are coming, yes. Now it's not, that's not the case anymore.
Actually, you certainly didn't hear that from the press, but the Russians ran a chess game in those days. They were running it, and they aren't running this turn of the socialist revolution here. But they did run that one. They're great chess players. They usually win at chess. And they take a long approach to things, and they did to subverting the American press. And they got into the universities and the American press. If you were a susceptible young person in the press in those days, they got you a little bit of money when you had none. They got you girlfriends if you were a guy, or boyfriends if you were a girl. And once they got somebody moved up in the hierarchy, they were all set. That agent would be pulling the others up after them. My opinion is that the Russians got 80 to 90% of the normal press subverted. It's not that they were gun-carrying communists or anything like that, but they had them fully doped off into the spiel that goes with it. And the communists had the Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks.
Right.
And the Mensheviks were the ones that took the gradual thing, and the Bolsheviks said power comes out of the barrel of a gun. Well, the Mensheviks took on America and England, and they were very successful over there, and they got quite a ways down the line here. So that's where a good deal of the press got subverted. They didn't think of themselves as communists, but they were certainly very great allies to the Russians, could see nothing wrong there.
Well, Jack, since you brought up your age, I want to mention this. You lived during a time when being a journalist was, at one point, it was a noble profession.
Yes.
Now, there is no effort to hide the bias. There's no effort to hide.
They don't know it's a bias.
They do now. Oh, yes, they do.
Oh, they're part and parcel to the whole agenda thing.
Exactly.
I mean,
well, it's matured a lot, of course, but in those days, you know, you could be sincere about the ethics of socialism, communism, Marxism, whatever you want to call it. It's all pretty much the same. In fact, there's a great book written by a fellow that was part of the apparatus called Witness. It's a thick book, a work of art that gets ignored by the people that normally would be interested in an extremely well-written book. But there's a guy that was swept along in the ethics of it and revolted against it and turned to an enemy of it. And he was behind the prosecution of Alger Hiss and some of these other people. So it was a very long thing. But my final statement on the thing is that the press got subverted 80 or 90%, and it stayed that way. That perversion that went on in the press that brought people into this socialist milieu, the communists weren't really successful in taking over, you know, with the Communist Party USA. They were serious about subverting the Democrats. They did subvert the Democrats to a considerable extent, and they really got the press. And if I had to guess about it, I'd say 80% of the press is still subverted and doesn't know it.
now, Jan, you had a media company because you started your media company because the mainstream media, the lamestream media was just not doing their job.
Exactly, yes.
What was your...
Tell us about it.
Yes, tell us about it. What was your primary investigation and how did it get you to be a very strong Second Amendment advocate?
I started promoting, when I saw Barack Obama, when he spoke at the Democratic National Convention years ago, the first time I ever saw the man speak, before he was even a contender, before anyone ever even talked about him as a contender, I was walking through the living room of my house and I saw him speaking and I stopped. I had a laundry basket in my hand. I set it down and I just said, oh my gosh.
I said the same thing to my husband.
I turned to my husband and I said, you watch, this man is going to be the first black president of the United States. His race was not an issue with me. The color of a person's skin does not matter to me. What matters to me is their politics. So immediately when I saw him, I thought, who is this guy?
Yep.
I started researching him, and the more I learned, the more frightened I got, because I knew that most American people will not take the time to do this kind of homework, and the media is not going to tell you who this guy is. They're not going to tell you what he's done, what he stands for, and what he wants to do. So I did my homework and immediately started using my Facebook, which at that time only had 1,500 people, friends on it. It went from a social page, from me posting things like, you know, I'm about to go pick, you know, beans out of my garden. It went from that to, let me tell you about this man. I started posting about Barack Obama. By the time he ran for office, my page had turned entirely political. I lost a lot of friends, liberals mostly, of course, but I also started gaining friends, conservatives, who were seeing what I was doing and they were sharing my post with other people. And the next thing you know, that page I became a political pundit. The page went national. There are 350,000 people now on my Facebook pages and my website. Most all of them hardline conservatives. We have Republicans, we have Libertarians, we have Tea Party patriots, but the one thing we all have in common is that we all believe in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and it's being trampled by this current administration. It's been trampled in the administration before this. I'm not just focused on Democrats and saying, well, there's what's wrong with this country. What's wrong with America is apathy. It's that the good people for too long have remained silent. So my deal is put the facts out there because people aren't getting it on the mainstream media. Fox is doing a pretty good job, but Fox can't be everywhere and they don't have the time. They're not putting the time into investigative journalism. So that's what we're doing. My site, there are other great sites like Town Hall Media, dailycaller.com, Breitbart. There are some wonderful websites out there that are doing the job that the original press was supposed to do. we're educating the public. And what I'm trying to do is reverse the apathy. That's my main goal, because we can sit here and say that America's greatest threat is communism, it's Islam, the Islamization of our country, it's this, it's that. I believe our greatest threat is apathy. Until we wake up the American people and make them start paying attention to what's going on in America, we're going to lose this battle. And we are in a war for our liberty. For our country is about to change permanently, if it's not already.
Well, a few weeks ago, the president had 23 presidential orders and
executive actions related to gun control. Yes, he called them executive actions rather than executive orders, but we still know what they are. So, and
that was specifically on gun issues. You're a huge Second Amendment person. We are going to be going to break here in a few seconds, but when we come back after the break, I want to hear why you got involved in the Second Amendment. It's a compelling story. Stay with us. You're not going to want to miss this show. We'll be right back.